The year is 1718. A pirate ship is anchored in a quiet Caribbean cove, her crew drunk on plundered rum, her decks scattered with stolen silks and silver. Then the lookout sees it, a pale triangle of canvas on the horizon. The captain raises his glass, studies the silhouette, and feels his stomach drop. Because that is not a merchant ship. That is not a Navy sloop. That is a frigate. And the moment he sees those three masts, that long, sleek hull, those rows of black gun ports, he knows the entire crew is in mortal danger. Within an hour, anchors are cut. Sails are unfurled in panic. Men who moments ago were singing and gambling are now pulling on lines with terror in their eyes. Because every pirate in the Caribbean knew the same thing. You did not fight a frigate. You ran. And if the frigate had the wind, you probably died anyway. This is the story of the warship that ended the Golden Age of Piracy. The ship that hunted Blackbeard at Ocracoke Inlet. The ship that ran down Bartholomew Roberts off the coast of West Africa. The ship that, more than any other single weapon, swept the great pirate captains from the seas and made them into history. This is the story of the frigate, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why 1,000 cutthroats and killers would rather face a hurricane than face one of these ships in open water. To understand the frigate, you first have to understand the problem it was built to solve. In the late 1600s, the great navies of Europe faced a strange new enemy. The Spanish treasure fleets had created an entire economy of theft. Sugar plantations in the Caribbean had made islands like Tortuga and Port Royal among the richest places on Earth. And along every shipping lane from the Carolinas to the coast of West Africa, pirates were swarming. They were not just a nuisance, they were a strategic disaster. By the 1700s, piracy was costing the British Empire millions of pounds a year. Insurance rates in London soared. Merchants refused to sail without escort. Colonial governors begged the Admiralty for protection. The problem was, the Royal Navy had the wrong tool for the job. The pride of every navy in this era was the ship of the line. These were the floating fortresses of the age, the battleships of their day. A first-rate ship of the line carried 100 guns on 3 decks, was crewed by 800 men, and weighed over 2,000 tons. These ships were unstoppable in fleet battles. They were also useless against pirates. They drew too much water to enter the shallow inlets where pirates hid. They sailed too slowly to catch a nimble sloop, and the cost of operating one for a single year could fund an entire colony. On the other end of the Navy was the sloop, a small single-masted ship with 1 deck and maybe 10 or 12 guns. Sloops were fast and shallow drafted and could chase pirates almost anywhere. But the problem with a sloop was firepower. A pirate sloop, crewed by 60 desperate men with cutlasses and pistols, could often beat a Navy sloop in close combat. Boarding actions favored numbers and ferocity, and pirates had plenty of both. So the navies of Europe faced a paradox. They needed a ship fast enough to chase a pirate, shallow enough to follow him into a cove, and powerful enough to blow him out of the water when they caught him. They needed a hybrid. And in the early 1700s, naval architects in France, the Netherlands, and Britain began converging on the answer. That answer was the frigate. The word frigate comes from the Mediterranean, where the term fregata had been used for centuries to describe small, fast galleys. By the 1640s, the Dutch were applying the name to a new type of full-rigged sailing ship, a single-deck cruiser built for speed. The French refined the design through the 1700s, producing some of the finest fast sailors of the era, and the Royal Navy, watching its rivals, eventually adopted and standardized the frigate as a distinct class of warship. By the 1740s, the typical Royal Navy frigate had settled into a recognizable form, 140 feet on the gun deck. She had a beam of about 38 feet. She drew between 15 and 17 feet of water, which was deep enough for blue water sailing, but shallow enough to enter most harbors. She displaced between 500 and 1,000 tons, depending on her rating, and she carried somewhere between 28 and 44 guns, all mounted on a single continuous gun deck above the waterline. That single deck was the genius of the design. By placing all her main armament on one deck, the frigate kept her center of gravity low, which meant she could carry sail in heavier weather without rolling her gun ports underwater. A ship of the line, by contrast, had to close her lower gun ports in any kind of swell, because if mortar poured in, she would capsize. A frigate could fight in conditions that would make a ship of the line helpless. She could also sail faster, point higher into the wind, and turn tighter. The sail plan was another marvel. A standard frigate carried 3 masts in a full ship rig. That meant square sails on the foremast, mainmast, and mizzenmast, with fore and aft sails between them for fine maneuvering. A skilled crew could spread enough canvas to drive her along at 12, 13, even 14 knots in a strong wind. For comparison, a typical pirate sloop might do 9 or 10 knots at best, and only in ideal conditions. Once a frigate had the wind, the chase was effectively over. But speed alone was not enough. The frigate also had to win the fight at the end of the chase. And here is where her armament tipped the balance into massacre. A 28-gun, 6th-rate frigate carried 24 9-pounder long guns on her gun deck, plus 4 6-pounders on her quarterdeck and forecastle. A 9-pound iron ball traveled at over 1,200 feet per second and could punch through several feet of oak at close range. It could dismount a pirate's gun. It could splinter his deck. It could turn a man into a red cloud at 100 yards. And the frigate could deliver 14 of these balls per broadside, reloaded by trained gun crews every 90 seconds. A pirate sloop, even a heavily armed one, might mount 10 or 12 4-pounder guns. These were lighter, shorter ranged, and far less destructive. In a stand-up gunnery duel, a sloop facing a frigate was outranged, outgunned, and outclassed. The math was so brutal that any pirate captain who understood it would never accept battle on those terms. Which is why pirates ran. And which is why the frigate was built to run them down. The Royal Navy West Indies Squadron was the spearhead of the anti-piracy campaign. Based at ports like Port Royal in Jamaica and English Harbour in Antigua, this squadron patrolled the Caribbean from the 17 teens onward. The ships were a mix of small ships of the line and frigates, but it was the frigates that did the real hunting. Vessels like HMS Scarborough, HMS Pearl, HMS Swallow, HMS Lyme, and HMS Adventure became names that pirates whispered with hatred. In 1717, HMS Scarborough engaged Edward Teach himself, the man the world would come to know as Blackbeard. The fight was inconclusive. Blackbeard slipped away into the shallows, but it was a sign of what was coming. The Royal Navy was learning his haunts. The Royal Navy was patient, and the Royal Navy would be back. The hunt for Blackbeard came to its climax in the fall of 1718. Governor Alexander Spotswood of Virginia, fed up with Blackbeard's depredations along the Carolina coast, took matters into his own hands. He chartered 2 small sloops, the Jane and the Ranger, and crewed them with sailors and marines drawn from 2 Royal Navy frigates anchored in the James River. Those frigates were HMS Pearl and HMS Line. The command of the expedition went to a lieutenant of the Pearl named Robert Maynard. Maynard sailed south. He found Blackbeard anchored at Ocracoke Inlet on the outer banks of North Carolina, hidden among the shoals where no large warship could reach him. On the morning of November 22nd, 1718, the 2 sloops crept into the inlet. Blackbeard fought them with his usual ferocity. A broadside from his ship the Adventure killed 20 of Maynard's men in a single blast. But Maynard hid the rest of his crew below decks, and when Blackbeard boarded what he thought was a crippled vessel, the Navy sailors swarmed up from the hold and overwhelmed him. Blackbeard died on the deck of the Jane with 5 gunshot wounds and over 20 cutlass cuts in his body. His head was severed and hung from the bowsprit. The Jane and the Ranger sailed back to Virginia with that grisly trophy swinging in the wind, and the message to every pirate in the Atlantic was clear. The Royal Navy was coming, and the Royal Navy was using the resources of her frigates to do it. A few years later, in 1722, came the engagement that effectively broke the back of Caribbean piracy. The target was Bartholomew Roberts, known to history as Black Bart. Roberts was the most successful pirate of the Golden Age, capturing more than 400 ships in his short career. He commanded a flotilla led by his flagship Royal Fortune, mounting 40 guns and crewed by over 150 men. He was the king of the pirates, and by every measure, he was untouchable. Except that Captain Challoner Ogle of HMS Swallow had been hunting him for months. The Swallow was a 50-gun fourth rate, larger than a typical frigate, but operating in the same role as a fast, independent cruiser. Ogle tracked Roberts across the Atlantic to the coast of West Africa. At Cape Lopez, in what is now Gabon, he found Roberts anchored with his consort, the Ranger. Ogle approached under false colors, pretending to be a merchant. The pirates took the bait and sent the Ranger out to capture what they thought was easy prey. Ogle led the Ranger out of sight of the main pirate force, then ran out his guns and revealed himself. The Ranger surrendered after a short fight. Ogle then returned to Cape Lopez to finish the job. On the morning of February 10, 1722, the Swallow caught the Royal Fortune trying to escape. The pirates were drunk from a captured cargo of wine. Roberts himself, dressed in his finest crimson coat, hung gold chains around his neck and prepared to fight to the last. He never got the chance. The very first broadside from the Swallow killed him instantly when a grape shot tore through his throat. His men, demoralized and hungover, threw his body overboard so the British could not display it. Then they surrendered. The trial that followed at Cape Coast Castle was the largest piracy trial in history. 264 pirates were tried. 54 were hanged. Many more were sent to slavery or imprisonment. The Golden Age of Piracy did not end on a single day, but if it had a death scene, this was it. And the executioner was a single frigate-sized warship. If you are enjoying this dive into the warships that built the modern world, hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next deep history video. The channel covers naval battles, lost expeditions, and the forgotten ships that changed everything. So how did the frigate actually catch her prey? Because chasing a pirate across the Caribbean was not a matter of pointing your ship at him and going. It was a delicate science that combined seamanship, navigation, and brutal discipline. The first principle was the long chase. A pirate sloop in open water might have a top speed advantage of a knot or two in certain wind conditions, especially in light airs or when running before the wind. But in a stiff breeze, with all sails set, a frigate could match or exceed her. And here is the key. A frigate could maintain that speed for days. Pirates could not. Pirates had small crews, limited provisions, and exhausted men. A frigate had a crew of 200 or 300 sailors working in disciplined watches. She could keep the chase up for a week if she had to. To squeeze every last fraction of speed out of the ship, frigate captains used techniques that bordered on the obsessive. They rigged studding sails, extra canvas extending out beyond the yards on light spars to capture more wind. They weighted the sails with seawater so they would hold the air more tightly. They pumped fresh water overboard to lighten the ship. They shifted ballast to trim her perfectly. They had men climb out on the bowsprit to act as living counterweights. Every trick of the seaman's art was used to gain another quarter knot. Because a quarter knot over 24 hours meant gaining 6 nautical miles on the prey. The pirate would do the same. He would throw cannons overboard to lighten his ship. He would dump cargo. He would even hack away parts of his own deck. The chase became a contest of will, and the Navy almost always won. When the frigate finally caught her quarry, she had 2 ways to end it. The first was simple destruction. Pull up alongside, run out the guns, and pound the pirate to splinters. A single broadside from a 32-gun frigate could shatter a sloop's mainmast, dismount half her guns, and kill a third of her crew. 2 broadsides usually ended the fight. The frigate would then board what was left, secure the survivors, and tow the prize back to port. The second option was more dramatic. It was called a cutting-out expedition. When a pirate had taken refuge in a harbor or river too shallow for the frigate to enter, the captain would launch his ship's boats. The longboats and barges, packed with armed sailors and Royal Marines, would row in under the cover of darkness or fog. They carried muskets, cutlasses, pistols, and grenades. They would swarm the pirate ship at anchor, kill or capture the crew, and bring the vessel back to the frigate as a prize. The Royal Marines aboard a frigate were a critical component of this whole system. A frigate carried between 30 and 50 Marines depending on her size. They were trained in small arms drill, in close-quarter combat, in boarding tactics, and in shore landings. They were the precision instrument that complemented the frigate's blunt force. When the broadsides could not reach a target, the Marines could. And then there was the gunnery itself. The Royal Navy in this era trained her gun crews to a standard that no merchant ship and certainly no pirate crew could match. A well-drilled British frigate could fire 3 broadsides in 5 minutes. That meant a wall of iron coming at the enemy every minute and 40 seconds. Pirates, for all their ferocity, were not trained gunners. There were sailors and thieves who fired their guns occasionally. The discipline gap was enormous, and in a stand-up fight, it was always decisive. But the frigate was not just a pirate hunter. As the 1700s wore on, this class of ship became the most versatile weapon in any navy's arsenal. She escorted convoys of merchant ships across hostile oceans. She raided enemy commerce, capturing prize ships for profit. She scouted ahead of fleets, ran dispatches between admirals, and showed the flag in every harbor of the world. The captain of a frigate often operated independently, far from any squadron, making his own decisions. This was a romantic role, and it produced some of the most famous officers in naval history. Men like Edward Pellew, Philip Broke, and a young Horatio Nelson all made their reputations in frigates before they ever commanded a ship of the line. By the late 1700s, the design had reached its mature form. The French Navy was producing frigates of stunning quality, ships like the Hebe and the Pomone, with finer lines and better sailing qualities than anything the British had. When the Royal Navy captured these vessels, they often copied them directly. Naval architecture was a moving target, and every navy in Europe was learning from every other. Then, in the 1790s, on the other side of the Atlantic, a new player entered the game. The young United States Navy needed warships for its own anti-piracy operations, this time against the Barbary corsairs of North Africa. The American designers, led by Joshua Humphreys, took a radical approach. They built frigates that were bigger, heavier, and more powerfully armed than anything in European service. The result was a class of 6 ships that included the USS Constitution, the USS United States, and the USS President. These were the heavy frigates. The Constitution measured 204 feet in overall length. She displaced 2,200 tons, nearly twice the size of a standard British frigate. She mounted 44 guns nominally, but in practice carried up to 54. Her main armament was 24-pounder-long guns, far heavier than the pounders of a typical British frigate. Her hull was made of southern live oak, a dense and resilient American hardwood, with flanking over 2 feet thick at the waterline. In the War of 1812, she fought and defeated 3 British frigates in single-ship actions, earning her the nickname Old Ironsides when British cannonballs were seen to bounce off her hull. The Royal Navy had no answer. Their standard frigates were simply outclassed by these American behemoths. The Admiralty issued orders that British frigates should not engage American 44-gun frigates unless in pairs. It was a humiliation for the world's premier navy, and it forced a redesign. Within a decade, the Royal Navy was building its own heavy frigates, the Leader class and later the Java class, to match the American ships. The arms race had reached the cruiser category, but all of this happened decades after the Golden Age of Piracy had already ended. By the 1730s, the great pirate captains were dead, hanged, or vanished. Henry Avery, Edward Teach, Bartholomew Roberts, Calico Jack Rackham, Anne Bonny, Mary Read, Charles Vane, Stede Bonnet. The whole catalogue of legendary names was finished within 20 years. Piracy did not disappear entirely. It survived in the Indian Ocean, off the Barbary coast, and in the South China Sea. But the Caribbean was largely cleared. The shipping lanes were safe. The plantations could ship sugar without armed escort. The age of the gentleman of fortune was over, and it was the frigate that closed the door. You could argue, and historians do, that the suppression of piracy was about more than ships. Colonial governors offered pardons to pirates who came in voluntarily. Mass executions in places like Charleston and Boston served as terrifying deterrents. The decline of letters of marque after the European peace treaties of 1714 removed the legal cover that many pirates had once used. All of this was true, but none of it would have worked without the credible threat of being hunted down at sea, and that threat was carried by the frigate. Think about what the frigate represented to a pirate. She was faster than your ship. She was better armed than your ship. She was crewed by trained professionals who fought with discipline rather than fury. She was supplied with months of provisions and unlimited powder. She had a clear chain of command and orders to kill you. She would chase you across an ocean. She would find you in your hidden cove. She would smash your sloop with broadsides, board your decks with marines, drag your survivors back to port in chains, and watch you swing from a gallows. There was no escape from her. Not really. You could run for a while. You could hide for a while. You could even win a single engagement if you got lucky. But the Navy had hundreds of frigates and you had one ship. The math was hopeless. The frigate also represented a deeper shift in the balance of power on the seas. The Golden Age of Piracy was made possible by a particular moment in history. A moment when European navies were exhausted from decades of war, when colonial governments were weak and underfunded, and when the shipping lanes were too vast to patrol effectively. The frigate changed that. She was the affordable, scalable, deployable instrument that turned the Royal Navy from a slow blue water fleet into an everywhere fleet. With frigates, you could be in every harbor at once. With frigates, you could enforce a blockade across an ocean. With frigates, the British Empire became truly global. By the early 1800s, every major navy in the world had standardized on the frigate as her primary cruiser. The Spanish had them, the French had them, the Dutch, the Russians, the Swedes, the Danes. Even the Ottoman Empire built frigate-style ships. The design crossed every cultural and technological boundary. It was simply the right answer to the problem of how to project naval power efficiently. The age of the sailing frigate ended in the middle of the 1800s, when steam power and iron hulls began to transform naval warfare. The last great sailing frigates were built in the 1850s. Ships like the USS Wabash and the British Mersey class were the final flowering of a tradition that stretched back 200 years. Then steam engines, screw propellers, and ironclad armor changed everything, and the wooden frigate slipped into history. But the name survived. In every modern navy in the world today, you will find ships called frigates. The USS Constellation, the HMS Iron Duke, the French Aquitaine class, the Indian Chivalric class, the Japanese Mogami class. These are missile-armed warships with computers and helicopter decks and gas turbine engines. They have nothing in common technologically with the wooden ships that hunted Blackbeard, but they share a name and they share a role. They are the cruisers of the modern fleet, the fast, flexible, hard-hitting ships that do the everyday work of naval power. The descendants of the ship that ended the Golden Age of Piracy. And if you visit Boston Harbor today, you can still see one of the ancestors. The USS Constitution lies at her berth at the Charlestown Navy Yard, the oldest commissioned warship still afloat anywhere in the world. Tourists wander her decks, children ring her bell, old veterans salute her flag. Below the waterline, her live oak hull still holds the salt water of 2 centuries. And if you close your eyes and listen to the creak of her timbers, you can almost hear the echo of an age when ships like her ran down pirates across the open ocean, when a sail on the horizon could mean death or salvation depending on whose flag it carried. When the world's oceans were patrolled by these long, sleek wooden hunters, with their rows of black gun ports and their crews of disciplined men, the pirates of the Caribbean live forever in our movies and stories. Captain Jack Sparrow and Blackbeard and Bart Roberts are immortal characters in the popular imagination. But the ship that beat them, the ship that broke them, the ship that swept their world away, is mostly forgotten outside of naval history circles. That ship was the frigate. And for nearly 2 centuries, she was the most feared sight on any pirate's horizon. She still is, in a way. Because every modern frigate that patrols the Strait of Hormuz, every modern cruiser hunting drug smugglers in the Caribbean, Every helicopter-armed warship intercepting Somali pirates in the Gulf of Aden, every single one of them is doing the same job that HMS Pearl did at Ocracoke Inlet and that HMS Swallow did at Cape Lopez. They are using fast, well-armed cruisers to police the oceans. The technology has changed beyond recognition. The mission has not. The frigate is still the answer. If you made it this far, you clearly love the deep history of warfare and the sea. Subscribe to the channel for more long-form documentaries on the ships, soldiers, and battles that shape the modern world. New videos drop every week.